Tonight we are at step 4, in which we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We started out and we did the first part of the inventory last week, and maybe this week we can go through the other 2 sections of the inventory. And to get down, each week we do a slight review, and tonight we will do a review. We start out with what is the problem, and that is the first step to recovery. This is the first information that we gather in solving a problem. What is the problem? We're talking about solving the problem of alcoholism. And as we go through the first step, we find that the problem is that we are powerless. Powerless. And it explains in the doctor's opinion in the front of our big book that we're powerless over alcohol, and our lives have become unmanageable. And the doctor's opinion explains for the first time the real nature, exact nature of the problem. It says we have a twofold problem. We have a physical problem. It is a disease, number 1. And this is disease that affects the body and the mind. You know, most illnesses are affect the body or the mind. And alcoholism, he said, is any discussion of this which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete, because I'm sure in this case the body is sickened as well as the mind. And he talks about this physical part of our illness as a physical allergy. We are abnormal drinkers. We are abnormal when it comes to the drug alcohol. And I never really, I knew it was something wrong with me, but I didn't know I was an abnormal drinker. And I drank alcohol for 16 years, and I didn't know that I was drinking abnormally, because the way I drank was normal for me. You know, I drank one way. I took a drink and wanted another drink. Every time I took a drink, I experienced this craving, and it was normal for me to experience this. So I didn't know that I was abnormal. And I drank with a lot of other abnormal drinkers that drank like me. But I found out when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous that I was an abnormal drinker. When I took a drink of alcohol, something occurred in me that did not occur in the average temperate drinker. When I took a drink of alcohol, I experienced a physical craving for another drink. And this craving would make me reach for another drink. And the more I drank, the more I would crave. And I would continue to build and continue to drink, and alcohol would almost every time I drank, I had some minor or some kind of problem in my life. My life became unmanageable. So I found out when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous that I was abnormal. And Dr. Silkworth went on further with this. He said there's no known treatment for this, except the only thing we can just suggest is total abstinence. If you don't take the first drink, you won't have that problem. Now that was too simple for me. You know what I mean? I wanted something more complicated. If you don't take the first drink, you will never experience the craving of alcohol. But that was just part of my problem. My main problem was in the mind. My main problem was this mental obsession. The idea that overcame all other ideas. When I did drink, I had an obsession. I had a lot of things that go on in my life. The doctor said that I was restless and irritable and discontent. And I could add some long list of a lot of things. I was lonely. And I was full of self-pity, remorse and guilt of things that I'd done in the past. And these things would eat at me constantly. And then finally, at a certain point, I would remember the sense of ease and comfort. I remember how great I could take a few drinks and these things would go away. I would remember that. And then I would say, oh no, but I can't drink because I got in trouble the last time. But your mind said, oh, but it make you feel so good. And the sense of ease and comfort would overcome all the ideas that I couldn't drink. The idea that I could drink would overcome the idea that I couldn't. And I would reach over. This obsession would make me take a few drinks. And as soon as I took a few drinks, those few drinks would trigger the craving in my body. And the craving would make me take another drink and another drink. And I would go through the well-known spree, and I'd get in a lot of trouble. As soon as I got out of trouble, I would go around for a few days, a few weeks, And I say, I'm through with that stuff. And this thing would build up again. The obsession would be triggered again, and I would reach over and take a few drinks. So this vicious cycle was setting, and I was really, I was in a trap, and I really didn't know the exact nature of the trap I was in. And I think I'm very blessed as an alcoholic, because most alcoholics will die or become a victim of the disease of alcoholism before they even realize what's going on in their lives. But once we see this, that we are powerless, then the second step talks about a solution. There is a solution to this problem. And quite obvious, if your problem is powerless, it's from this first step that we extract the second step. This is why we have to have the first step. We have to have the information of the first step in order to find the second step. If your problem is powerless, then your solution will come from over here. Your solution will be power, obviously. And since we don't know anything about the physical allergy to alcohol, then the power would have to probably work within the mind. And he talks about if this power, by the use of this power, if we could bring about some personality changes, fishing to recover. If we wasn't restless, irritable, and discontent, we wouldn't feel full of guilt and remorse and shame all the time, then we would never have to remember the sense and ease and comfort that would come at once by taking a few drinks. Therefore, we would never take the first drink. And if we never took the first drink, we would never set off the physical craving in our bodies. So we believe that the solution is in the mind. Therefore, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. We can become whole, what sanity means. Now, if this is the problem and this is the solution, then the main purpose, the main proposition here then is obvious. If the problem is powerless and the solution is power, then the main thing would be how to find that power. How do we find that power? That's the main purpose of the program. So we have 10 steps, a little 10-step program left. We have steps 3 through 12, which is a plan to find that power. And it never fails. It says, we've never seen anybody that give us these directions or suggestions, what we look at. And if we would take these steps, then these steps will produce that power which is within, which will solve the problem. So we began the recovery program, or the process at step 3, when we made a decision. And, as we said, the first 2 steps brought us into step 3. And the step 3 was to decide which of these we wanted. Decision means to cut facts in two. And once we obviously, between the two, we took the power. We made a decision to turn our will and our eyes over to care of this guy as we understand. Now we had to go to work in the next step, step 4, to carry out this decision. And the next step, after step 3, is to find the things within us that block us off from this power. Now we alcoholics are, our book said we are selfish and self-centered people. What that really means, I guess, we just really screwed up. That's what it really means. We alcoholics, we're full of self. My friend Mel was shared something last night. I'd have to share this with you. Nothing is original for me. And he was telling me last night, we were talking about this Amish poem. It just really struck me. It sure fits us as alcoholics. And this guy, this old Amish, he was praying to God, and he said something to God, it seems like everything in this world strange except me and thee. And sometimes, God, thee a little. I love that. That's the way it looked to me all the time. But as we, what is within us that blocks us off from God? And then, to us, at times we say God doesn't exist. It's seemingly like in the alcoholic's life that there is no God, and God does not exist, because there's so much within us that totally blocks us from the great creator of this universe. The whole thing will shut off from it by the things that are within us. So this decision, step 3, is just a decision to do this. Now we have to go to work to identify these things that block us off. They're keeping us from carrying out the decision in step 3. And we begin the inventory process as we did last week. And it's very simple if we look at the big book on what the inventory is all about. The inventory is to identify the things within us. And our grosser handicaps is what we're going to start with. The things that block us off from God. God is within each and every human being. And he's going to have to work through our minds and into our lives. And the only way God cannot come into our minds, because our minds are filled with a lot of garbage. God can't direct a mind that's full of resentment, full of fear, full of conflict with other people. But we made this decision. Now we've got to go to work to take an inventory. We're going to look within our minds, that's ourselves, because today I am what I think. In fact, I can be no more than the thoughts that go through my mind. That scares me sometimes, but I can be no more than the thoughts that go through my mind. So and it talks about a stock in trade. We're going to inventory the stock in trade. We're going to inventory me. We're going to inventory our lives. We're going to inventory the thoughts that come through our minds each day. And we're going to fool ourselves about values. And we're going to see which of these things we're going to give away. We're going to get out of the way. We're going to identify the unsaleable items. And we're going to make room. As we remove these things, we're going to make room to carry out this decision, because when we remove some of these things, then God can come in and occupy that part of our minds and direct our lives. So the first thing we did, we talked about resentments. And this was our number 1 offender. And it said we were to to list all of our resentments. And that was easy enough to do. We alcoholics, we play these things over and over in our minds. We talked about them last week. And the first thing we do, we list the name of people, principles, and institutions that we resent. Just put them all down. And we were looking at this is a very simple process. 1, 2, 3, 4. List every person, every institution, every principle we resent. And we go completely down that list. If we have a list, if we want to write it out, if you got 20, 100, or 50, just put them all down. If you got, just put down their names. Until you completely empty your mind of everybody you resent. And that's simple enough to do. You don't have to be, don't have to be a genius to do this. Anybody can do this inventory process. Then after we get that list filled out, then we come to the second list. And maybe this is the best way to look at it. After we complete this list, then we put in the second column, cause. Why do I resent number 1? And then you go, you'll go down, put in number 1, and then you go, why do I resent number 2? Why do I resent number 3? Why do I resent number 4? You go down this list from top to bottom, then you go down this list from top to bottom, never going across. Now, it's from the first list, and this is why it was important that we put down all of our resentments. Because once we got all the names down, it's from the names from this column that we extract the second column. See? The second column comes from the first column. The cause comes from the name. And then once we get this column down. Then we put in the third column, kind of running out of space here. Which part of self did the cause strike? Did that person threaten my self-esteem? That's the social instinct. Or did he threaten my security instinct? Or did he threaten my sex life? One of those had to be threatened by what he did in order for me to have a resentment. So it's from the cause, from this column, from the first column, we get the second column. And when we trace the second column, we get the third column. The third column comes from the second column. So one column is giving you the next column. Now this is what we were going to really get down to, because remember we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And it says self was the root of our problems. So it's through this process we have found what's within ourselves. You know what I mean? We've gotten down to really to the exact nature of the problem. And then once we get this column, then we go to the fourth column. Which character defect within me actually that caused this? And we will find out, you know, if we will, with honesty, that each resentment, we played a role in it. You know, I had played resentments over and over many times in my life. And I resented people. And I always talked about what they did. And they did do something. But I had replayed that over and over and over so much that I'd never been able to see the truth of it. Because I had rationalized in my mind what they had did over and over to me, and never one time in my life had I ever looked at what I had to do with this. And very honestly, it was astonishing that in each resentment, nowhere did anybody ever come up and do something to me. I had always set the ball rolling, but I had never looked at them. So we go down and we find out, you know, in this case, you know, was it my selfishness? Was it my dishonesty? Something part of my character actually set this ball rolling. And we played a role in each of these resentments. So in this fourth column, we mark what role did I play in this. And we can look at the third column and we can develop the fourth column. So if we have completed this, then we have really listed, not only listed, this is listing our resentments, but these three columns here is analyzing it. We have listed and analyzed each resentment. For the first time, we get the true picture. Now, if I don't get rid of these character defects over here, obviously, you know, these are the things, if I don't get rid of these things are gonna always occur. But if I can get rid of these, regardless of what people do, I will not have a resentment. And this is why we talk about being free. Because as long as I'm living with these resentments and having these and living like this, then these people are controlling my life. So if we have done that, we have analyzed, and at this point all the fears that we had, the resentments that we had should be gone. So, you know, we have made a decision to make God the director of our lives. So this area of our minds, He cannot come in and occupy. You know, there's no void. And as we remove these things, then God can direct our minds. God can direct the mind when it's full of resentment. It blocks us off from the sunlight of the Spirit. We're blocked off from God the moment that we have a resentment. But after he finishes resentment on page 67 of our book, he said, notice the word fear, which is bracketed along the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones' employer, and my wife. This short word somehow touches every aspect of our lives, and it does. Fear is a part of our lives. You know, we couldn't live one day without fear. Fear plays a major part in our relationships. It plays a major part in our just being here tonight. You know, there's no way that one of us could survive throughout the day without fear. It takes caution to drive your car, which is a form of fear. It takes fear to cross the street. You know, we have used fear all day long. In fact, none of us could have we couldn't even have a good relationship. Right tonight, if we took fear out of this audience, it would be chaos. For one thing, everybody in here would tell the other one what he thought about it. And that wouldn't be good, would it? That really wouldn't be good, would it? So fear is a part of our lives. I never really understood it. I understood, we men, we are machos. We're not supposed to have it. Now, it's natural now, but you're not supposed to have it. When I was a kid, they told me growing up, I don't know how I was. I got one night probably. They say, you shouldn't be scared of the dark. You're grown now. And now I really got a problem. See, first I was scared of the dark. Now I got another fear. I ain't supposed to have it, so I can't tell them I got it. See what I mean? So they really created a problem for me. But it is a part of our lives. It is fear plays a useful role like resentment. Fear protects us. It produces caution to slow us down to get into things. Fear is a vital part of our lives up to a certain point, and then it becomes destructive. And nobody's perfect with it. So it's a part of our lives, but then how do we control it? I'll use the illustration all the time about I have some negative. Fear is a negative indicator that probably should trigger some actions in you. When a negative indicator goes off, that means you need to take some actions. Just like on your automobile, on my automobile, I have some red lights on the dashboard. And they are negative indicators. And when one of those red lights come on, it says the engine is hot, then that means I have to stop and get some water or do something about it to keep from destroying the engine. They really protect the car. And when the negative indicator comes on, there's certain actions that you need to take. Now, but if this negative indicator is out of whack and it's coming on and there's nothing wrong, then that's a problem for you. It's false. It's projecting false things and you're reacting to something there's nothing to do. And this is what happens to the alcoholic. His red lights just come on all the time. And he drives his car down the street. Now, most people drive the car down the street looking out the windshield. He drives the car down the road looking at the red lights. And we alcoholics, and it's a time in our lives we've been driven by these things, and now it's time to stop and list these fears and analyze them and see if they're real. Because we're reacting to them whether they're real or false. They're dominating our lives. For the first time, we're going to look at them and see if they're real. And this is what the process of the inventory is all about. And to do that, we have to get them down on paper. List and analyze them. And so I had to list and analyze these fears. And he tells us exactly in the big book, if we study our book, how to do this. Very simple process in the big book. He said we reviewed our fears and we put them on paper. We put down the things we were fearful of. Just make a list, I fear, the internal revenue and whatever we fear. We fear a lot of things, our boss, other people, institutions. And this lists everything that we fear. And we're not going to try to figure out why. We just put them down, all the fears that we have. And once we complete this, then we have a list of the things, people, persons, and institutions that we fear. Then we come to the next column and we put down the cause. Why do I fear that? And if we don't know, just put down, I don't know. We're going to try to analyze ourselves. So I fear that because my mother set me on the pot back. Which, we're not going to try to psychoanalyze ourselves. Just put down, I don't know. A lot of these fears, we don't know why we got them. Just put them down. A guy said, I fear high places. I said, hell, ain't nothing wrong with that. That's natural. You ain't got no wings. You're supposed to fear high places. Okay, so the next thing we come to the third column. Now this is very revealing. This is why we could self. And we said self is made up of our social instincts. Remember that. Our self-esteem, our personal relationships, our prides, our companionship, which make up our social instincts. Self is made up also of our security instincts, the second column. And they're all S's, by the way. That's very peculiar. Social security, sex, I don't really go. But then our security instincts, materially and emotionally. Now, then we have our sex instinct. Now, in order for us to have a fear, this is real simple. In order for me to have a fear, because the fear has to affect one part of self. Does it threaten my self-esteem? Or does it threaten my security, my material security? I have a lot of fear. Or my emotional security? Or does it threaten my sex life? It has to threaten one of these in order for me to have fear. So which part of self was threatened? And we checked the cause and the cause produced, and we put an X in here, whichever part, and sometimes it's a combination. Which part of self was threatened? This is why we have this fear. And then we go to ourselves. Then we come to our character defect, column 4. Which character defect within us has a play in this fear? Was it dishonesty? A lot of times the things I feared, say I feared the IRS. We all do. Because I cheated on my tax return, right? Which part of a self caused this? Well, material security. I wanted that money. Which character defect was involved? Dishonesty. Okay. So I had this fear all my life. But did not I set the ball rolling? If it wasn't for the character defect, I wouldn't have had this wouldn't have happened, and then I would have never had the fear. So didn't I set the ball rolling? I found in most of the fears, the main problem was right over here in the character defect. This was the thing that I had feared all my life. In the same way we said in resentments, there's certain people over here on our resentment list that we resented, and we found out after we saw that our role was involved with dishonesty, we actually owe these people an amends. And the same way about the IRS. Instead of me fearing them, I owe them amends for my dishonesty. And we look at that in a different light. And we'll find out as we go down this list and make this list, we'll find out that most of step 8, a lot of the list on step 8 is going to be the same things with the fears. These are going to be things that we were involved in. It says we reviewed our fears thoroughly, put them on paper. We asked ourselves why we had them. It's the second column. And it wasn't because self-reliance failed us. And so which part of self was involved? And we go through these things and analyze them. And it says, after we have done these things and analyzed these things, we get rid of most of these fears. And then we have fears that seem to stay, just like the resentment, some of those deep-seated resentments. And he tells us how to get rid of those in our book. He says, we trust God. We never apologize for God. We let him demonstrate through us what he can do. And then we have these prayers that stay. He said we pray about them. We asked him to remove our fears and to direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commenced to outgrow fear. We hear about the other prayers, the prayers in step 3 and the prayers in step 7. But there's another prayer in step 4. There's a prayer on resentment. There's a prayer on fear. He said if we have fears, we ask God to remove them. And it says at once we will outgrow fear. So we have completed step the first part, the resentment part, and now the fears. We have listed and analyzed our fears. We have analyzed most of them out, and the ones that stay, we prayed and removed them. So at this point of the inventory, we have gotten rid of our resentments, we have gotten rid of our fears, and we're carrying out that decision because we're making room for God to come into our life. Then the final part of our book, he says the last indicator, he says, how about sex? Well, we love this part. Many of us needed overhauling there. Boy, and I always tell the older fellas, don't get your hopes up. We're not talking about what you think I'm talking about. We're talking about mental, not physical. We can't overhaul there. If we did, we'd have a bigger crowd tonight. Okay. And here people get off into all kind of, if we bring this subject up, golly, in the modern times, we know more about going to the moon than we know about sex. Everybody talks about it, don't know nobody knowing about it. But sex is a basic instinct that God gave man. He gave us a unique sex life. He gave us the ability to think, reason, and use our, something that he didn't give the lower class of animals. The lower class of animals they are really God-directed creatures. They don't really have choices like we do. And God gave them a simple sex life. God controls that when he's ready for them to reproduce, and usually it has to do with the time of year, right? He will have them mate so that as a time takes place, so it will be born at a certain time of year, so the offspring will live in the spring, right? So at a certain time of year, God, the female comes in heat, the male just responds to that, and the sex act is brought on, and they recreate in the spring of the year, and other than that, they have no desire for sex. But God gave us the ability. He gave it to us. He gave man his own ability. He said, I'm going to give you this, man. You're going to have the decisions in this. And this is a great problem. You know what I mean? We get the ability to think about it. That's the trouble. We think about it. And other animals don't. And it's how to, and this is a part of every human life. It's one of the strongest drives in a human being. You mean? And my book says, we wouldn't be human if we didn't have sex problems. I did not know that. See, everybody's got sex problems. Even the people that say they don't have them got them. You know? See, I always thought a sex problem was something else different. You know what I mean? I always thought it was a physical thing. When I first come to AA, they said, you got a sex problem. I said, the hell I do. See, but I didn't know what they were talking about. When they explained it to me, I said, oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't know anything about this. Here I am, I thought I knew. I didn't know nothing about it. But the sex is a part of our life. And this instinct is God-given. And it's really, we're not talking about this book is not going to get into our sex life, really. Not to our sex conduct. It's not going to get into telling us what to do and what not to do. It's not going to give rules. It says it wants us to look at our sex conduct of the past on an individual basis so that we can formulate, if we look at our past, we can formulate something better in the future. That's all we want to do. And so it begins, it tells us on page 69, we reviewed our sex conduct over the past years. Whom had I hurt? First column, who did I hurt? That's simple enough. Now, we might say, many of us have said, well, I really never did anything wrong sexually. Well, you might not did anything physically wrong sexually, but all of us have aroused, because of the sex instinct probably, have aroused some jealousy, some bitterness, and some suspicion, we have done some of those little things, right? All of us. Every human being. No one's been perfect with this. You know, I usually in a sex, I love to tell about one of my favorite stories about the young man who was going to get married, and he had a problem. They wanted to get married, and he was doing Lent, and he went to the priest, and the priest said, well, I can't marry you, it's doing Lent. And they said, Father, we want to get married bad, real bad. He said, well, I can't marry you unless you make some sort of supreme sacrifice. And they said, well, we'll do anything you say. They just wanted to get married. He said, well, what kind of sacrifice you want to make? He said, we'll sacrifice anything. And the father said, well, how about sacrificing sex until the end of until Lent? And he said, well, okay. So they volunteered to do that. And finally, a couple of weeks, the father saw him downtown. He was talking to a young man. He said, great, hi, good to see you. And he'd married him, and he was asking about the marriage and how they were doing. And the young man said, oh, we're doing fine, fine. And he says, how's your marriage life? I said, oh, it's beautiful. And he said, how did y'all do on that commitment? Did you keep it? Is everything going all right? The sacrifice, are you doing all right? He said, Father, we had a little problem with that. He said, we were doing fine. Until finally my wife had one of those short mini skirts, and she dropped a can of peas on the floor, and she bent over to pick them up, and he said, I just couldn't go no further. He said, don't you know they're going to put you out of church for that? He said, they put me out of the supermarket. You know what I mean? You know, it's no one is immune from this. Okay, so we get these things, we go through this, and we put down who did I hurt, top to bottom, you know, and what we did, you know, whatever we did wrong. Maybe we made somebody buy, but we offended somebody in some way. And we said, we put down the cause, and then we put down which part of self caused us to do that. This is quite revealing. See, we went around with a lot of guilt and shame because of our sex conduct of the past. We feel we're really bad people. You know, for some reason, maybe we feel dirty. And I think we can get free from a lot of this by completing this inventory. We'll put these things down. And then we're going to come back to which part of self caused us to do that. And sometimes, you know, I think if it was a sexual wrong, we'd all assume real quick that it was caused by a sex instinct. You know, very seldom do we go out and do something just because of sex drive. No, it's not sex. As we list and analyze our sex conduct of the past, we're going to find out that most of our difficulties, the things we done, hurt other people, was not caused by sex. Most of it was caused by our social instincts. You know, we find out, you know, by maybe we're just lonely. See me? Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe we just want companionship. I mean, that's why we did it. Maybe it's our self-esteem. You know, we men, we get the idea, we growed up with the idea the more people of the opposite sex that you can track, the better, bigger macho guy you are. We build up our ego. It's an ego problem. It ain't a sex problem once we list and analyze it. Sometimes it's caused by emotional security. Caused us to do that. And sometimes material security. Very seldom is it caused by sex. But for the first time, you know, if we list and analyze these things, we get, you know, we find out we're not dirty people. We're not bad people. You know what I mean? I've just been doing this to feel better, to feel better about myself. Trying to build up my ego, build up my self-esteem with this sort of thing. And when we do that, you know, we have less desires to do that, and it seems to go away. You know, step 4, if done properly, it is to remove the things that block us off. And as we went through our resentments in this way, listed and analyzed them out, we went through our fears, listing and analyzing them out, and went through our sex conduct of the past, seen the real truth of it, worked our way through these things, most of these things are gone. You know, step 4 is a powerful removing step. It's a step to begin and work into his life. Now, it kind of makes a summary here, and we have done a lot. If we have been through our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. All 3 of these sheets are filled out. We have, and this is what we have listed, and we have listed and analyzed our resentments on the first sheet. And tonight, if we went through fears, we have listed and analyzed our fears. And if we go through the sex conduct of the past, we have listed and analyzed our sex conduct of the past. All 3 of these things. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. If we have analyzed them, we can really comprehend them now. Where our trouble is coming from, while we are drinking. We have commenced to see their terrible destruction, if we have done it in this depth. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill. You know, once these things are removed, something else comes in different. You know, once these things are removed, we begin to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies. Remember, our book says we're going to have a personality change sufficient to recover. And this personality change was going to develop slowly as a result of these steps. Already after step 4, we can see this personality change starting to develop right after step 4. New thing, revolutionary change. The resentments is gone. Tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men. The opposite is coming in. Revolution means a complete turnaround. Already, we can see that. We have listed people we have hurt in by our conduct, are willing to straighten out the past. And if we have done this, we can see this is step 4. And we talked about the things in self that made up self. We talked about this in these are step 3. This is self. And over here, these things we're going to talk about in 5, 6, 7. And we have made a list of the people we're going to hurt. Some of these people on this list are the people we offended. So we got 8 and 9 over here. We got 4 here. We got 3 here. We got 5, 6, and 7 here. And then we got 8 and 9 all on this sheet. If we'll work the inventory like the big book says, we have all the information for steps 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 right on these 3 sheets. He said, in this book you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision, this is step 3, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, and this is step 4. And remember it says grosser. I think everybody, this is all we have to do is start off is looking at our grosser handicaps. Yeah, we got other handicaps. We're going to be working on these for the rest of our life. But all we want to do is start on our grosser handicaps. I think the greatest difficulty with step 4 is most people are trying to wait till they get well and then take step 4. Now you take the step to get well. You don't wait till you get well to take the step. I mean, you just want to get the worst things, the grosser handicaps. That's all we got to do. You have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and ingested some big chunks of truth about yourself. So we have done step 4 as a big book. We have found out a lot about ourselves. For the first time, we've got a glimpse to our grosser handicaps. And also, we have learned a great process. Not only have we went through this and learned a lot about it, I learned something. I put something in my mind. I have learned in this process something that's been programmed into my mind. For the rest of my life, whenever a resentment comes up, by going through these sheets 3 times like this, going through the inventory process with 3 sheets, analyzing all these other things, every day in my life when when something comes up, I say, all I got to do is say, oh, this is a resentment. What is the cause of it? Every day. You know, when it comes up, I can immediately say, oh, I got a resentment. What's the cause of it? Which part of self did it hurt? Which character defect in me was out of whack? And I can immediately wipe it out. See, I don't have to go around replaying 20 years no more. I can get them as they come up. Step 4, not only analyze those of the past, but it gives me tools to get rid of all resentments on a daily basis, which we're going to talk about in step 10 for the rest of my life. Now, if we have completed step 4 at this point, we're ready to really now, things move along at this point because we've got the information for 5, 6, and 7. So next week we'll start on to step 5, and we'll move right on through step 6 and 7.